In the grand expanse of the Galactic Council chamber, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Counselor Vyrek stood with his hands clasped behind his back, gazing out into the star-filled void beyond the massive viewport. The leaders of the most powerful species in the Galactic Federation shifted uneasily in their seats, a silence enveloping the room that spoke volumes. Weeks had passed since the appearance of the Phantom, a colossal human dreadnought that drifted ominously on the edge of their territory. It was unlike anything they had encountered before, silent and foreboding, without communication or signals. It radiated an unmistakable menace. Admiral Kor, a formidable figure with thickly plated arms, broke the silence, his 4 yellow eyes blinking in confusion. "It shouldn't be possible," he rumbled. "The Federation controls all advanced shipbuilding techniques. How did they construct such a thing without our knowledge?" No one had an answer to his question. Across the table, Captain Jor, a veteran from the Federation's wars, leaned forward. His reptilian eyes flickered with a mix of fear and intrigue. "It moves like a ghost," he stated. "Its engines are silent, our scanners can't lock onto it. It's like nothing we've ever encountered." The Federation had deployed 5 of its finest fleets, each equipped with the latest technology, to intercept the Phantom. Yet none had returned, and worse, not a single distress signal had been sent. It was as if the human ship had swallowed them whole. Counselor Vyrek's voice dropped to a near whisper. "They're not just testing us, they're hunting." The room fell into a heavy silence, the weight of his words sinking in. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the chamber, prompting sharp glances among the counselors. All attention turned to the massive hollow screen at the center of the room, which displayed a live feed of an incoming human fleet. Captain Jor stood, his claws tapping urgently against the metallic surface. "We need to act now." Admiral Kor grunted in agreement. "Deploy all remaining ships in every sector." "They can't fight all of us." But Vyrek shook his head, his expression grave. "They aren't here for negotiation. The Phantom is not just a weapon, it's a statement." He locked eyes with each counselor in the room, his voice filled with conviction. "Humanity is telling us they are beyond the Federation now." The council hesitated, uncertain of their next move. Just then, the chamber door burst open, and a junior officer rushed in, panting. "Sir, we've detected something else." Everyone turned towards him, anticipation filling the air. "What is it?" Lieutenant Fick asked, tension thick in his voice. The young officer swallowed hard, sweat trickling down his brow. "The Phantom, it's not alone anymore." Outside, the Federation's finest warships formed an impenetrable line. Shield barriers shimmered, weapons charged, and commanders barked orders through their comms. The Phantom appeared on their sensors, moving slowly and deliberately, like a predator stalking its prey. Its sheer size dwarfed even the largest Federation cruiser. On board the lead ship, Commander Volas gripped the armrests of his command chair. "All ships, focus fire on the target," he ordered. A barrage of energy beams and missiles launched toward the Phantom, lighting up the space between them in a dazzling explosion of colors. But the Phantom didn't flinch, it absorbed the assault without any visible damage. Then, without warning, it returned fire. Massive energy beams tore through space, cutting through the Federation ships as if they were made of paper. One by one, ships exploded into fiery debris, their shields offering no protection against the Phantom's onslaught. Valtos watched in horror as his fleet was decimated, slamming his fist on the console in frustration. How is this possible? We're the most advanced species in the galaxy, he exclaimed. Sir, we're receiving a message from the Phantom, one of his officers shouted. Valtos nodded sharply. Put it through. A distorted voice crackled over the speakers. This is Captain Hargrove of the Phantom. Surrender or be destroyed. Valtos gritted his teeth. You think you can intimidate the Federation? We don't surrender. The voice was silent for a moment before it replied coolly, You misunderstand. This isn't a request, it's a fact. Before Valtos could respond, the Phantom fired again. Back in the council chamber, the feed flickered, displaying the destruction of the fleet. Captain Jor slammed his fist on the table. We need to retaliate. Vyrek stared at the screen, a look of grim realization on his face. Retaliation is not an option anymore. The humans have already won, we just don't know it yet. A heavy silence fell over the room as the weight of defeat settled in. We underestimated them, Jor whispered, and now the Phantom will decide our fate. The Federation fleet had been shattered, leaving chaos in its wake, scrambling ships and frantic transmissions. The Phantom, now accompanied by 3 more human dreadnoughts, loomed over the wreckage of their latest battle. Captain Jor observed the destruction from his lone cruiser on the battlefield's edge. His reptilian eyes flickered with desperation. The Federation, once the greatest power in the galaxy, had never faced anything like this. It wasn't just the ships, it was the human strategy, silent, efficient, and deadly. Sir, incoming transmission, a junior officer said nervously. Jor waved a hand. Patch it through. The same voice crackled over the comms. This is Captain Hargrove. You fought well, but this is over. Withdraw now, and you'll live. Jor growled. We don't take orders from humans. There was a pause, and then Hargrove spoke again. You should. The transmission cut off abruptly, and Jor slammed his fist against the console as another blast from the Phantom struck nearby. The shields held, but barely. All remaining ships, regroup. We make a stand here. The few surviving Federation ships formed a defensive formation around Jor's cruiser, their weapons trained on the human dreadnoughts. The odds were hopeless, but they had no choice. Fire everything! Jor ordered. Beams of energy and missiles launched toward the Phantom, but the dreadnought absorbed the assault, its shields flaring momentarily before returning fire. Federation ships exploded one by one, torn apart by the human superiority. Jor's ship rocked violently as explosions erupted around him. Captain! Shields are failing, one of his officers shouted. Jor clenched his jaw, determination fueling his next command. Divert all power to weapons. If we're going down, we're taking them with us. The ship's engines roared as it charged toward the Phantom. Jor's hands gripped the armrests of his chair as the distance closed. He surged forward, engines straining under the sudden burst of power. The Phantom loomed large before him, its dark hull resembling a void in the stars. Every muscle tensed, this was it. He would take down at least one of these monsters before his ship was torn apart. Impact in 10 seconds, an officer called out, his voice shaking. Jor nodded, locking his gaze on the enemy ship, thoughts narrowing to a single focus, one final act of defiance. All weapons, fire at will. Let them feel our fury. The cruiser unleashed its last volley, missiles and energy beams streaking toward the Phantom. The human dreadnought responded almost lazily, its shields absorbing the fire with ease. As Jor's ship closed in, a sudden flash of light blinded the crew, jolting the ship violently. When the light faded, Jor blinked, disoriented. "We've been disabled," an officer stammered. "They didn't even destroy us, they just stopped us." Fury boiled inside Jor as another transmission from Captain Hargrove crackled through. "We've neutralized your ship's systems. You won't survive a full attack. This is your last chance, surrender now or die in the void." For a moment, the bridge was silent as Jor's officers stared at him, waiting for an order. His claws tapped the armrest, the metallic sound echoing through the quiet. Surrender to humans? Jor had fought in countless battles, leading fleets against the fiercest enemies in the galaxy, but this was different. Humanity wasn't just another adversary, they had evolved beyond anything the Federation had anticipated. His mind raced, searching for options, but every scenario ended the same way: the humans had already won. He exhaled slowly, standing from his chair. "All ships, stand down." On board the Phantom, Captain Hargrove watched as the last of the Federation ships powered down. He leaned back in his command chair, hands steepled before him. "Bring the prisoners aboard," he ordered. One of his officers nodded, issuing commands to the fleet. Hargrove stared at the view before him, debris and shattered Federation ships scattered across the stars. It had been a clean victory, but not without purpose. "Do you think they'll retaliate?" one of his bridge crew asked quietly. Hargrove didn't respond immediately, his eyes narrowing as he considered the question. The Federation had been caught off guard, their arrogance shattered by humanity's sudden rise. "They will try," Hargrove replied finally. "But it won't matter. They've lost the will to fight." Days passed, and reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Phantom's display of power had sent shockwaves through the Federation. Worlds once under their control began to sway, considering their allegiance. Once strong alliances weakened, distrust spreading like a virus among the leaders. The fear of humanity's technology and ruthlessness instilled a new sense of urgency. They were no longer the only power in the galaxy. Back in the council chamber, Councillor Virek surveyed the scene. The room was filled with murmurs of concern and discontent. "This cannot continue," one councillor exclaimed. "We must unite against them." Virek raised a hand, silencing the room. "It's too late for that. We cannot fight them head-on. They have proven themselves a superior force. Our strategies must change." A different voice spoke up from the shadows, a figure draped in a cloak, hidden beneath a hood. "We must learn from them, then." The counselors turned to the figure, curiosity piqued. "If we can understand their technology, perhaps we can turn the tide." Virek narrowed his eyes. "You speak of infiltration? Espionage?" The figure nodded slowly. "Exactly. We can't beat them with brute force, but knowledge is a weapon too. If we gather intel, perhaps we can sabotage their operations from within." The counselors exchanged glances, the notion gaining traction. "This could be our only chance," Virek agreed reluctantly. "But it will require trust, something that has been lost." Days turned to weeks as the Galactic Council deliberated, planning their next move against the humans. Meanwhile, Captain Hargrove monitored the aftermath of their victory, aware of the changes rippling through the galaxy. He knew the Federation would retaliate, but he also understood that fear was a powerful motivator. The humans were no longer the underdogs. They were predators in a galaxy full of prey. Their victories inspired others. Ships were built in hidden corners of the galaxy, and whispers of a new human alliance began to form. It was a fragile peace, but it was one that Hargrove intended to nurture. In a distant corner of the galaxy, a young engineer named Lila worked tirelessly in a secret shipyard, her hands stained with grease as she pieced together the next generation of ships. Her dreams had shifted, no longer about exploring the stars, but about defending her home from the looming threat of humanity. The irony was not lost on her. She once admired the Federation, but now, she was determined to reclaim that legacy for her people. Weeks passed, and tensions mounted as both sides prepared for the inevitable clash. The Federation, shaken but not defeated, began to regroup, determined to reclaim their dominance. Hargrove, aware of the brewing storm, planned to strike first. He would not give them the chance to recover. In the quiet of his cabin, he stared at the vastness of space, contemplating the delicate balance of power. "It's time to remind them who they are dealing with," he whispered to himself. The war was far from over, and the human resolve had only just begun to be tested.